Formula One drivers are not revolting because the British Grand Prix ended in chaos. They are revolting because the chaos came from the system that is supposed to keep them safe. Silverstone. Late race drama. Safety car confusion. Charles Leclerc surviving to win. And then the FIA's explanation that made everything even worse. A software error. That phrase is the problem. Because when a driver sees a safety car message, he does not have time to question it. He does not have time to wonder if the system is right. He has to trust it instantly, at racing speed, with cars around him and danger somewhere on the track. But at Silverstone, that trust cracked. And now the grid is asking the question the FIA never wanted to hear. If race control can lose clarity during a safety car at one of the fastest circuits in Formula One, what happens when the next call comes at 200 miles per hour? Because this is not just about a messy ending. It is about safety. It is about trust. And it is about whether the drivers can still believe the instructions that are supposed to protect them. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why the drivers are so angry, you have to understand what a safety car is supposed to do. It is supposed to remove doubt. That is the whole point. When something dangerous happens on track, Formula One cannot become a debate. Drivers cannot start guessing. Teams cannot wait for 5 different interpretations. Race engineers cannot tell their drivers, maybe slow down, maybe do not, maybe the message is wrong. There has to be one instruction. Clear. Immediate. Trusted. That is what the safety car represents. It tells the entire field that the race has changed. The fight is temporarily frozen. The priority is no longer overtaking, tire temperature, energy deployment, or race strategy. The priority is control. Control of speed. Control of gaps. Control of the cars around marshals, debris, or danger. And that is why Silverstone shook the drivers so badly. Because the confusion did not come from the drivers. It did not come from a wheel-to-wheel fight. It did not come from rain, tire wear, or a risky overtake. It came from the system that is supposed to make everything clear. Race control. That is the first reason the reaction became so intense. Drivers can accept chaos when it comes from racing. They know what they signed up for. A rival attacks late. A car slides in dirty air. A strategy gamble changes the order. A safety car wipes out a gap at the worst possible moment. That is painful, but it is part of Formula One. But safety car confusion is different. Because the safety car is not supposed to create the story. It is supposed to protect the story from becoming dangerous. At Silverstone, that line blurred. And when the FIA blamed a software error, it did not calm the situation. It made the question bigger. Because a software error is not just one bad call from one person in a stressful moment. It suggests that the system itself, the technology behind the communication, the chain that tells teams and drivers what is happening, failed at the moment when trust mattered most. That is why the drivers are revolting. Not because they dislike authority. Because authority only works if it can be trusted without hesitation. And hesitation is exactly what safety systems are supposed to eliminate. Imagine a driver approaching one of Silverstone's fast sections. He is managing speed, tire temperature, battery settings, distance to the car ahead, radio messages, and the track surface. His engineer tells him a safety car situation is developing, or a message appears that changes the race status. He cannot ask for a full explanation. He cannot wait for a replay. He cannot pull over and compare notes with the driver behind. He has to respond instantly. Now imagine there is confusion in that message. One team reacts one way. Another reacts differently. One driver slows with certainty. Another is not sure. One pit wall thinks the procedure has begun. Another is waiting for confirmation. That is how a safety system becomes a risk. Not because drivers suddenly become reckless. Because uncertainty spreads at speed. And Formula One speed gives uncertainty almost no time to be corrected. That is the terrifying part. Silverstone is not a track where confusion feels harmless. It is fast, flowing, and unforgiving. The corners arrive quickly. The cars are loaded for long stretches. The closing speeds can be enormous. A small difference in reaction can become a large difference in position, momentum, or danger. So when a safety car process becomes unclear at a circuit like Silverstone, drivers do not see it as a minor administrative error. They see it as a warning. Because if confusion can happen there, during one of the most important safety procedures in the sport, then every driver has to wonder what happens next time. That is the question the FIA now has to answer. Not just what happened. Why was it possible? What failed inside the software? Why did that failure reach the race? What backup existed? How quickly did race control recognize it? Were all teams given the same information at the same time? And most importantly, what has changed so it never happens again? That last question is the one drivers care about most. Because drivers do not need a perfect public relations statement. They need confidence. Confidence that when a yellow flag appears, it means exactly what it says. Confidence that when the safety car is deployed, every car receives the same instruction. Confidence that when race control speaks, nobody has to wonder whether a software error is hiding behind the message. That confidence is not optional. It is the foundation of modern Formula One. The sport is already complicated enough. Drivers are dealing with strategy modes, tire windows, battery deployment, brake temperatures, track limits, gaps, penalties, and constant radio information. They do not need uncertainty added to the one category that should be absolute: safety. That is why this controversy hits harder than a normal penalty argument. A penalty dispute can be messy, but drivers can still race. A track limits call can be frustrating, but it does not usually make a driver question whether the safety communication system is reliable. A post-race penalty can change the result, but it happens after the danger has passed. Safety car confusion happens inside the danger. That is the difference. And once drivers feel that, the reaction becomes emotional for a reason. They are the ones sitting in the cars. They are the ones who must trust that when race control slows the field, the system is protecting everybody equally. They are the ones who would suffer first if confusion creates a dangerous speed difference or an unclear procedure. So when people call it a revolt, it is not just a dramatic word. It is drivers pushing back against the idea that this can be treated as a normal glitch. Because a glitch in a timing graphic is annoying. A glitch in a safety car procedure is serious. A glitch in the system that controls how 20 cars respond to danger is something else entirely. That is why Silverstone became a trust crisis. And trust is fragile in Formula One because so much of the sport depends on invisible systems working correctly. The timing screens, the marshalling signals, the race control messages, the software that communicates status changes, the procedures that tell teams when to slow, when to bunch up, when to pit, when to restart. Fans see the cars. Drivers live inside the instructions. And when those instructions become unclear, the entire race feels unstable. This is why Charles Leclerc's victory, as dramatic as it was, could not completely escape the shadow of the safety car chaos. Leclerc still won. Ferrari still celebrated. The race still produced a massive Silverstone moment. But when the conversation after the Grand Prix turns towards software errors and safety car confusion, the sporting result gets pulled into a much darker discussion. Because Formula One wants drama, but it wants racing drama. A last lap fight is drama. A tire gamble is drama. A driver under pressure is drama. A safety car process that leaves people questioning race control is not the kind of drama the sport can celebrate. That is the second reason the drivers are angry. The chaos does not just affect safety. It affects sporting integrity. If the safety car procedure is unclear, gaps can change unfairly. Strategies can be destroyed or rescued by confusion. Pit stops can become a lottery. Drivers can gain or lose because their team interpreted a message differently, or because the system did not communicate clearly enough at the exact moment decisions had to be made. That is not racing. That is disorder. And drivers hate disorder when it comes from the rules. They can accept losing to speed. They can accept losing to strategy. They can accept losing because another driver was better on the day. But losing because the control system became unclear is much harder to swallow. That is where the revolt becomes about fairness as much as safety. Everyone in Formula One knows that a safety car can change a race. That is normal. It can wipe out a lead. It can hand someone a cheap pit stop. It can bring a rival back into play. It can turn a controlled win into a final lap fight. Drivers may complain, but they accept it because the rule is part of the sport. But they only accept it if the procedure is clean. If the safety car changes a race, that is racing fortune. If confusion around the safety car changes a race, that is a governance problem. That is the difference the FIA has to understand. And at Silverstone, the drivers saw the wrong kind of uncertainty. The kind that makes them wonder whether the system is strong enough for the speed of the cars it controls. That is why the software error explanation cannot be the end of the story. It can only be the beginning. A real answer has to explain the protection around the error. It has to explain why the mistake was not caught earlier. It has to explain how the system will be tested, backed up, and communicated if something similar happens again. Because the drivers do not simply want to know why the screen or message went wrong. They want to know why they should trust the next one. That is the heart of Block 1. Trust. Not outrage for the sake of outrage. Not drivers trying to attack the FIA for attention. Trust. Formula One works because drivers obey race control immediately. They slow when told. They respect neutralized race conditions. They follow procedures even when those procedures ruin their race. They do that because the alternative would be dangerous. But obedience depends on belief. If drivers believe the system is clear, they obey without hesitation. If drivers start wondering whether the system is confused, the entire purpose of the safety procedure weakens. That is what Silverstone threatened. The safety car should be the cleanest instruction in the sport. Instead, it became the most controversial moment of the race. And that is why the drivers are revolting. Because they are not asking for special treatment. They are asking for the most basic thing a high-speed sport can offer. When danger appears, make the instruction clear enough that nobody has to think twice. But the anger did not stop with the first moment of confusion. That was only the spark. The real revolt began when drivers and teams looked at the FIA's explanation and realized how serious the word software really was. Because a software error is not like a driver locking up into a corner. It is not like a team choosing the wrong tire. It is not even like a steward making a controversial judgment call. A software error means the structure behind the race failed. And that is much more frightening. Formula One is built on trust in systems nobody outside the garage can fully see. Timing loops, race control messages, flag panels, safety car procedures, pit lane data, software connections between the FIA, the teams, and the circuit. Drivers do not personally inspect those systems before every race. They trust them. Teams do not have time to doubt every message when the race is moving. They trust the system. And at Silverstone, that trust was damaged. That is why the FIA's explanation did not calm the paddock. It raised a bigger question. If a software error can create safety car chaos at Silverstone, how many layers of protection failed before that chaos reached the drivers? That is the question that turns a mistake into a crisis. Because in a sport as fast as Formula One, one system should never be the only thing standing between clarity and confusion. There should be checks, backups, confirmations, human oversight. Procedures that catch the error before it becomes part of the race. Drivers know that. Teams know that. And that is why the revolt is not only about what happened. It is about what the error revealed. It revealed that something in the safety communication chain was fragile enough to disturb the race at one of the worst possible moments.